Spoiler alert for everything Fleabag. Hey everybody, Fiona here, and welcome to the first episode of our new podcast series here at the Script Department called Stepping into Frame, all about women in screenwriting. And before we talk about that, don't forget to like, share, or subscribe to the Script Department podcasts. You can find them on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also pop over to the Script Department website at scriptdepartment.net, and you can check out what our global network of screenwriters are up to. And you can even buy us a coffee if you'd like, which would be great. So today I am joined by Lorna. Hi, Lorna.
Hi.
And today we are going to be talking about Fleabag, but not as you know it. So the Women in Screenwriting podcast is going to talk about a few different things. We're going to be reviewing films written by women. We're going to be talking to women screenwriters, and we're going to be talking about books about screenwriting. Because I don't know about you, Lorna, but as a screenwriter, I'm a massive nerd in that I love reading books about writing. Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely obsessed with story, not just the experience of it, but the nuts and bolts in the background and what makes it tick or not tick. Love it.
No, yeah, exactly. Getting right into the nitty gritty, right? Which
Yeah.
is great. So on that, we're going to be weirdly talking about the book about Fleabag. We'll talk about the series, but we want to talk about this particular book. Here we go. Look at us. They were great. And we were not paid to do that. So this book is the special edition, and this is published by Nick Hearn Books. And there's something kind of interesting about that, which I'm going to let Lorna talk about in a second. But before we jump into the book, Fleabag. I mean,
Mm,
what do you think about it? Tell me about what you've seen and what you
yeah.
love or don't love.
Oh, now as soon as it appeared on the screen, I just fell in love with it. I just love the way that Fleabag is just so flawed and and just but trying her best, but there's just she brings such a connection for me. I know people who hate it, but for me, I absolutely love her and the way that she just flails about so desperately, and that kind of honest brokenness and the connection that she has with you, like through the camera, and yeah, I just think it's inspired.
It is inspired, and I think so too. I absolutely agree. Love it. Loved it from the moment I saw it.
Mhm.
Um, and I want to ask you about how it relates to your screenwriting,
Mm.
because for me as a screenwriter, I like to write about. I have a very particular niche, so I
Mhm.
like to write about unusual women in
Yeah,
unexpected situations. That's kind of
yeah,
my thing.
yeah,
And what I liked about this was that sort of talked to it
yeah,
to me in
yeah,
a
yeah,
little bit. But equally, what I love about the Fleabag character is that she's actually also very much an every woman. Like she
yeah,
is all of us to
yeah,
some extent,
absolutely, yeah,
a
yeah,
bit broken, maybe
yeah,
not handling things quite the right way
yeah,
all the time,
yeah.
all that sort of stuff. So I loved it from that point of view. What was it?
Mm.
Was there anything particular that really grabbed you about it?
Yeah. It's the whole, because is it like the fourth wave of feminism? I've lost track how many waves there have been now, but in terms of the fact that because there was such a pressure to be perfect as a woman, that to be able to succeed in life as a woman, you needed to be able to have everything, do everything, and get it right. And it just kind of wipes away any attempts at perfectionism. It's like, forget about it. We are human beings who are broken, and we're just all trying to do our best.
Exactly. I love it. It used to be, didn't it, that like years and years ago that women can have everything. And then
Mhm.
it was women can have everything, just not all at once. Well,
Yeah.
actually before that there was women can have nothing. But then
Yeah,
it was,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, having everything was a definite improvement, but
yeah, exactly. But now it's all about we don't want everything. We just kind of,
Mm,
we don't even care about the kind of, the can we have it, can we not? We are what
mm,
we are. It is what it is, and it
yeah,
really feels like that. It's such a celebration of imperfection and frailty, if you like, in the
yeah,
most
yeah,
lovely way. I think, which
yeah,
is fantastic.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about this particular book. So
Mhm,
when I did a bit of a call out to my network and my mates, including you, Lorna, and said, you know, who's got a good book they want to talk about? And it was you who raised this
Yeah,
particular book
yeah,
with me.
yeah.
Tell us a bit about what it is about this book that you particularly liked from a screenwriting or writing point of view.
Well, there is so much to love about it. I mean, it's like it's as you can see, it's very thin, always an advantage. You haven't got much time, but so and half of the book, well, a bit more than half the book is the script, and so you can have a look at the script that was the original theatre production script that they did. But then the opening bit is just interviews. So there's an introduction that's written by Deborah Frances White, and she is the person who initially asked Phoebe to come along to her London storytelling night and do like just a segment on there. And so she decided to do this monologue that was the very first Fleabag, and it's a 12-minute set, I think, that she did just and it's evolved since that particular point. But so Deborah Frances White is the person who does the Guilty Feminist podcast, and
Right.
yeah, so it's obviously perfect guilty feminist type material, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly. And so,
Yeah,
so in the book, she talks about a couple of themes which I want to sort of dig in. Well, there are a few themes that come up that I want to dig in a little bit with you. And the first one is about audience. So one of the things, because as soon as you said you talked about this book, and I was like, oh, actually, I'd read the one I had read or kind of read was
yeah,
this one, the
it was.
scriptures one, which is
Yeah,
the TV series scripts.
hmm,
But I hadn't read this particular one,
yeah,
so I jumped out and read it. And one of the things, there were a few things that were really interesting, and one of them was about audience and
yeah,
about what how she talks about how she puts the audience right at the center of her writing, like
yeah,
really
yeah,
squarely in the center of her
yeah,
writing.
yeah, yeah,
And I think she talked a little bit about the timing and
mm,
how she works really closely on the timing of her
yeah,
jokes and the
yeah,
timing of the material and
yeah,
stuff, particularly as a comedy writer. Can you
yeah.
talk to a little bit about that and what she was talking around about the audience
Oh,
piece?
yeah. I mean, I love that too. And so, in terms of so in here, one of the things that Phoebe Waller-Bridge says is that I am obsessed with audiences, how to win them, why some things alienate them, how to draw them in and surprise them, what divides them. It's a theatrical sport for me, and I'm hooked. And I'm so jealous of that kind of level of feedback that she gets
Yeah,
when she
yeah,
writes and performs. I mean, it's a really brave thing to just write something and stick it straight out there, but just to get that level of feedback on everything that you've written, and the things that they did in their little theatre in terms of testing to see. So they used to set challenges for the writers. So get the audience to laugh, get the audience to cry, get them to heckle, get them to forgive a terrible crime, get them to fall in love. And they would do certain tests to get immediate response from the audience, so they can see whether or not they've been successful. And that is just fascinating. I would love to be able
yeah,
to get that level of insight into what makes us tick and what makes us as an audience, because there's a collective element to watching a theatre production in particular, and you're all kind of influencing each other to a certain extent in a way that you
yeah,
don't get that collective response from TV. But all of that
yeah,
research
definitely.
just will have
And I think it's
absolutely fed into
interesting,
everything she writes.
oh, sorry, I've just overlapped you there. We had a little delay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
Um, I think you're right, and I think it's really interesting, particularly around comedy. So
mm,
and around the fact that she writes comedy, and I know
yeah,
so I tend to write, and I'm going to ask you about how it relates to your comedy writing because I know you like to
mhm,
write comedy, and I found I tend to be a hybrid. So I'm usually a dramedy, like
yeah,
a
yeah,
or
yeah,
with
yeah,
or a rom com. I tend to sort of cross over into those sort
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
hybrid versions. But I'm at the minute I'm writing a purist comedy TV pilot,
yeah,
and it's been really interesting when I read
mm,
that book and I read what she said about how deeply and how concisely they
yeah,
practiced the comic timing and they
yeah,
tweaked the
yeah,
words and they
yeah,
minutiated the
yeah,
lines
yeah,
to get
yeah,
those responses from the audience. And so it's
yeah,
made me go into this script that I'm writing and be
yeah,
really tight, you know, really
yeah,
relook and rework the lines How
Yeah.
has that impacted you as a writer, or is this something you were instinctively doing because you tend to, you like comedy, you tend to write comedy? How does
Yeah, yeah.
that been for you?
I mean, I would love to be able to get that feedback, and so I hope that I'm able to feel the timing. I mean, when I'm writing dialogue, I'm often feeling the rhythm of the words and hoping that um, gets the right kind of response. And then when when your dialogue runs on and it's several lines, you think you need to edit it down, but you like the
Yeah.
rhythm of it, and then you have to
Yeah.
edit it down to make it tighter, but then also re-find a new rhythm with your new words that aren't quite so verbose. And but yeah, but you can still do it. So yes, but definitely there's a rhythm and timing of things, and then finding when you're putting actions in between dialogue, it's knowing when you need a pause in there. But then again, because obviously when directors are working, they can kind of play with that time. And obviously then in the
Mm,
editing phase, when you're writing a script, you can play with that time and just find that. So it's definitely a team effort. I don't think alone as the script writer you can completely convey it. It has to, like, it's
yeah.
definitely a full complete thing once it's been um
Yeah.
shot and edited, and then that's when it's really, you have to
Yeah.
really tune the spokes there.
Exactly. Do you find though, and I certainly find this, there are moments when I'm like, I really want that joke to stay. I want
Yeah,
that
yeah.
joke to stay exactly
Yeah,
as it is. So I'm going to write it in a way that everyone's
yeah.
going to keep it. No one's going to, it's going to be so good that no one's going to edit that out or change it or, do you find that, or are you much
I
better
try
at being
I
flexible?
try to kill my darlings when they need to be killed. I do try to, but there are times when I'm just like, I love it too much. It has to stay.
Yeah.
And if I don't think it's justifying its existence on its own, then something needs to be done, doesn't it? There's one thing that Phoebe Waller-Bridge talks about with Vicky Jones about if a scene can be improved with a surprise ninja turning up, then it's not working hard enough. So they use
It's
that as a
really
test.
nice. It's a
So
great
I will
litmus, isn't
definitely
it?
use that.
I love it, and that's really interesting. So let's talk a little bit about one of the other things she talks about in the book, which is around writing partners, because and
Mm.
feedback really.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
she talks a little bit about, and she's got a great anecdote, which I think
Mm.
which you can tell because it's really funny, about accountability and writing
Yeah,
partnerships. What
yeah.
did you discover in the book around that?
I love her relationship with Vicky. So Vicky Jones is her stage director and dramaturg, and they work together really closely on Fleabag and loads of other things that I'm sure they do everything together still. But the way that they absolutely love and believe in each other. Phoebe says that when she left drama school, she was actually a bit lost because she'd lost the joyful playfulness that she had originally, and but then Vicky brought that out of her again, and so the together they just worked so well together. But yeah, one of the things that Vicky did was lock Phoebe in the room because she wasn't finishing Fleabag, and they really needed to get it done. They went up to Edinburgh on the train, and she was still tweaking the script, and she hadn't quite got the kind of cut to the heart moment that she was
Wow.
desperately trying to get. And so I think she had to lock her in the room in Edinburgh to get her to finally write that last bit that it desperately needed.
That's some pretty intense, isn't it? And I love the
Yeah.
way that she was so it went from being the 10 or 12-minute monologue
Mm,
in at
mm,
Leicester Square in the
mm.
story,
Yeah.
meeting, to then becoming the Edinburgh Fringe thing. But the fact that she was still writing it on the train on the way
I
up to the
know.
Fringe Festival is
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
staggering. Like that is, I
yeah.
wouldn't get on that train. I would
No,
be,
yeah.
I'd have such imposter syndrome. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to turn up and it's not going to be finished and I'm going to be embarrassed. So, and the fact
Yeah,
that you did that was amazing. So tell me,
yeah.
do you have an accountability partner, or who gives you your feedback?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to a certain extent learn to be your own, don't you? But I mean, as you know, I've got plenty, including yourself, of writing friends who, if we're just not like, not doing what we need to do, or if we need some advice, we can just turn to each other and just go, this isn't working, or what do you think of this? And But I think in terms of actually churning stuff out, I'm quite good. What I really need at the minute, I've got some supporting documents I need to write for the sitcom that
Oh,
I've written. And I'm
those
finding plenty
things.
of other things to do at the minute. I mean, I genuinely do have other things to do, which are really important, but I'm sure I could also find time to do a bit more writing in between.
It's staggering what we can find to do when we have a
Yeah,
deadline, isn't it? Like it's
yeah,
staggering the how many times you want to clean the house, something you may
yeah.
never ordinarily want to do, but when you've
I
got a deadline,
don't know what you mean.
suddenly, or things you need to purchase urgently on Amazon. I don't know, things like that. So yeah, it's quite funny. So let's talk a little bit about the crossing of from theatre to TV, because I think that's one of the
Mhm.
really interesting things
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Fleabag as a piece of work is that it started as one very distinctive small piece of
Mm.
theatre,
Yeah,
turned
yeah,
into another long form piece of theatre, and now
yeah.
it's then turned into this incredible. And I mean, just looking at this as a sort of, it's gone from
Y
this to
yeah,
this is,
yeah. Yeah,
but in that process has actually changed massively.
yeah,
It's almost in some ways it's a completely different piece of work, but the thing that
yeah,
links it is the characterization, I think, in that
yeah,
Fleabag character.
yeah,
What
yeah.
did you notice about that shift from the theatre script to the TV script?
You know what? I mean, I noticed that there are still so many moments that stayed. So from the theatre piece, they've still got um like everything, like everything. I've just flicked onto the masturbation scene, sorry. um and yeah, there's just so many moments that they've managed to do, but then they've managed because that's a completely different beast structurally to change it
Mm.
from a basically one act monologue, um, and and then turning it into a whole TV series. It's got arcs in every single episode, and
It's got a
um,
hot priest now.
yeah, well,
It
yeah, who doesn't love the hot priest?
Really, I mean, but even that was fascinating, isn't it? That you go
Mm,
from a monologue that didn't, or a short piece that it wasn't there, to
mm,
suddenly creating this character. And not only have you created this new character in the new series, but that character has a whole world of its own around it, and
mhm,
the response to that character
yeah,
has been really
yeah,
striking.
yeah,
And that must
yeah,
be really amazing, to go from that development, I guess, from something that
yeah,
maybe she'd never even thought of, to suddenly there's this other character in there that everybody's talking about as much as
yeah,
Fleabag, which is kind of
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
completely agree. And
w-
her then trying to kind of find redemption. There was one really interesting thing in terms of turning it into the TV show that was about finding the director, and which is something that I kind of identify with at the minute. And it's like, so um they were going through different directors and they were all saying different things like she's cold, she's fucked up, she's lets it all hang out, her vagina's on her sleeve, and all kind of things that kind of buzzy, but not quite getting to the heart of it. And it wasn't until they found Harry Bradbeer that they knew that they'd found somebody that could then really got the character and could really draw it out. And obviously, there were so many women surrounding Fleabag in terms of its inception that it's interesting that they chose a man who really did kind of get to the heart of the character and understand her, um,
mm,
and and yeah, brought her to life on TV.
yeah, and I think that's actually a good thing, because I think there's a whole bunch of different characters in that
Mm,
piece, and I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that
It's
balance is
important to have the
is
male
really
perspective
good.
as well.
Oh, most definitely, and I think, yeah, and it feels like a really balanced piece, which is really nice. So, what is it? If you got in the Fleabag? Well, I guess, did you see the theatre version? Did you
No, I've
see
never seen the theatre
Okay,
version, so this is the closest I've got to the theatre version, so that was really
got you.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, so I read this one, but I saw the
Mm.
National Theatre's filming
Oh.
of the theatre
Oh, yeah,
version,
yeah.
if you like, yeah, which
Oh, you
was
know
really
what?
good.
I did. I have seen it. Yeah, it was it during lockdown that that was released? Yeah,
I
I'd
think so. I
completely
think so.
forgotten about that.
Well, I'm glad I jogged your memory. That's a good thing. So, and because I think that was really interesting, because watching that, and I actually saw that. after I'd seen the complete series of Fleabag.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I was kind of
exactly, yeah.
working retrospectively a little bit.
Mm,
And I
mm,
and that I think was the thing that was really fascinating to me, because I felt the theatre version was really different. Like, it was a really different beast. It was almost,
yeah,
and it wasn't. It's come
mm,
from her.
yeah, yeah,
She's built it and developed
mm,
it, but it
mm,
felt really different, and it felt different
yeah,
because I thought the good thing about it was the fact one of the really good things about it was
mm,
that she, in the theatre piece, she's sitting on a stool and she's just
yeah,
directly addressing the
mm,
audience for the whole thing.
mm, mm.
But in the TV series, she does the little
Yeah,
direct
look
to
at the camera.
audience
Yeah,
lurk,
yeah,
yeah, which is
yeah,
lovely. And I kind of thought that was a nice little reference
mm,
to that. It still
mm.
brought that really
Yeah,
that intimacy through. And I think that was the
yes,
thing that was interesting, is I felt in the script for the TV show that character managed to create an intimacy with the audience
yes,
that was
yeah,
similar to the theatre version,
mm,
because in the theatre, just as you'd said right at the beginning,
mm,
the beauty of a theatre audience is you're sitting with people, you're right there at
yeah,
that moment, sharing
yeah,
that live moment with that
yeah,
actor. And I think that that was a really nice mechanic, if you like, to be able to
yeah,
achieve that same thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Is there
yeah.
anything else you thought
Well,
about
see,
the
that
two?
reminded me of something that says in here, because it says in theatre, people come to you or
Mm,
come to you or your characters. In TV, characters arrive in people's living rooms, their kitchen tables, and often even taken into bed with them. It's a very intimate way of communicating with an audience and a privilege to experiment with. With this in mind, I was determined for the audience of the TV series to feel like they were having a personal relationship with Fleabag, hence the audience address.
mm.
And so yeah, that and
Yeah,
all of that. It's just so clever way of translating something that is a different beast. Theatre is very different to TV, but translating that intimacy, and remembering that you are in a different place with them than in the
yeah.
theatre is really important.
Definitely. And I think it worked particularly well when you get to the end of the second series, and there's
Mm.
that moment where she's sitting at the bus stop and the little fox walks past, and she tells the fox to go and chase the priest, and then and there's that moment where she lets us go as an audience. She
Yeah,
sort of
I
lets us go
know.
and she walks off, and I think, and I love that as a framing device as well, in a
Mm,
way, is that you
mm,
come into the series as her sort of bestie, in a way. We kind of
yeah,
are, in a way, because there's that
yeah,
whole thing
yeah,
with Boo and whatever.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and then but she actually does let us go. And I thought it's
Mm,
really beautifully done, because you don't, I mean, they certainly use that direct audience address in other
mm.
things. Like, I think Gentleman Jack uses it really nicely. I really like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And it's been used quite a bit, but I thought it
Mhm,
was particularly poignantly
mm.
used in
Yeah,
Fleabag, the TV series,
yeah,
because it does make you feel like, oh, she doesn't need us anymore.
yeah,
Like, we can
yeah,
go now.
yeah. Well, I thought that, and we thought that when we were watching it, in terms of that it felt like, she had grown and moved on and letting us go in a positive way. But when it's
Mm.
referred to in the book, they're saying that she actually, at the end of it all, she wishes that she hadn't let us in, and that just makes me feel so sad. I want her to
Yeah, it
be
does,
like
doesn't it?
whole and happy, not like
Exactly.
feeling completely
Yeah, a
broken
little
by
bit.
everything that's happened.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it is a little, there's a melancholy to it, isn't it? Isn't
Mm,
there? Where
yeah,
it probably should be just a joyous thing, but there is a little bit like, oh, that's a little bit sad.
yeah,
But that's a very good character, isn't it? And I love the
yeah,
way that she says that, you take an audience along, you keep they're laughing, they're laughing, they're
mm,
laughing with you,
mm,
and then you just hit them in the stomach with something
yeah, yeah,
really
yeah,
difficult. And I think she managed to. That's one of the great things that she managed to achieve in her scripts, is that light and shade. And I know,
yeah,
we talk
yeah,
about the fact in writing that you don't. You can't really know joy until you know the darkness, and vice
yeah,
versa. And
yeah,
having those contrasts is really important. And so I thought she did that really well. And in particularly
mm,
in scenes where in the TV series, in the scene where her sister's having a miscarriage. And it's a
mm,
really difficult scene,
yeah,
and it's a really
yeah,
terrible thing. But then when she comes out and she like punches
yeah,
punches that guy in the face. She does a face punch. And it's like, it's hilarious. So you kind of laugh, and then you're laughing and crying within a split
yeah,
second of each other.
yeah,
And it's
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
brilliant. So I
It
think she
is
does that
brilliant.
incredibly well. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's
And
such a tightrope to walk, isn't it? That kind of
yes,
place
it
between drama and
is.
comedy, and
It
she's obviously
is.
so skilled at it. And it's through, I'm sure, that experience in the theatre that she like absolutely learned the just the minutest of changes that can really just switch everything
Yeah.
around.
Exactly. One of the other things she talks about is how she likes to load a character up with three things. Do you remember
Mm.
that? Like she likes always. Well, I think it was in. Where did I read it? She likes
Mm.
to put three complexities to a character at any given
Yeah,
time. So I think
yeah,
she talks about at
yeah,
the beginning of uh, the the stage play how the
yeah,
character
yeah,
comes in and she's sort of hot and sweaty and she's worrying about things and there's all this stuff going
yeah,
on. And I thought that
yeah.
was a really interesting technique
Mm,
to kind of be very
mm,
specific about saying, right, each of my characters is going to be contending with three specific things,
yeah,
three specific
yeah,
issues.
yeah.
When you write your characters, do you think in those, that's a very, I guess, a very structured way to think. Do you
Yeah,
apply those same sort of techniques?
I think what I generally do is because, well, the answer to that is once upon a time, particularly when I was doing my MA and I was just having a lot of fun, I tried to throw everything in the kitchen sink at my characters just for lols. Um, and but as I've matured as a writer, I'm just trying to strip it all back and just be like really get into the heart of it because otherwise it just ends up being noise. And I really want to
Yeah.
focus in on what the actual heart of what the character's going through. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's so for me
So
at the minute, what I'm doing is stripping things back and just trying to keep it purer and more kind of focused on the character arc rather than the kind of millions of other sci-fi things happening on around them.
got you. Got you. So how do you create depth in your characters? How do you because I think that was one of the things she was talking about is how she
Mm,
creates a complexity of character. I mean, for me,
mm,
I
mhm,
don't load I don't do that because I don't
mm.
have the mental complexity to manage that level of thinking. But but what
Just making a
I
cup of
I do
tea,
it
that's hard enough, thank
yeah,
you.
exactly, exactly. Open the bloody door. So, that's all you got to do. Anyway, no, so I tend to think about it in terms of the character arc, though. I mean, I know you
Mm,
mentioned the
yeah,
story arc,
yeah.
and sort of
Mm,
similarly. So I tend to rely on the arc to get me there, and I think
yeah.
about okay, I've got to get um, character from being psychologically A to
Mm,
psychologically B,
yeah,
what are those
yeah.
trigger moments along the way that are
Mm,
going to do that rather than
mm,
going, okay, well, at this point in time, you're contending with this and this and this.
yeah, yeah.
It's just, I think it's easier.
Yeah,
How do you
yeah.
find you work in that sort of situation?
Mm. Yeah, so when I'm developing an idea, I'm always thinking in terms of like, so a particular situation. So it's like scenario and character kind of sit side by side, and they both feed into each other. So you need to find the best character to explore a particular scenario. So like, um, the character needs to do a podcast. If the character likes doing podcasts, then there's not much conflict there, and it's not much story. So then you have to
Mm.
then generate a character who doesn't like doing podcasts, and they have to overcome that fear of public
Yeah,
speaking. And then that's what makes people invest in them: the fact that they have this fear. But what is it that makes them want to go through that to get to the other side? And
yeah,
so if there's a possibility to do a podcast, they don't want to do a podcast, but there's no benefit to them to get to do that podcast, then they're just not going to do it. And again, it's not much of a story. So it's
yeah,
that thing that motivates that character to then go, right, okay, I am going to do this, and then them navigating the conflict and change that causes for them in their lives and in that experience that then brings them out the other side changed and having
mm,
either gained or not the thing that they were
mm,
hoping to get on the other side.
mm. Very interesting. It's fascinating, isn't it? Different people's approaches to how they develop up and characters and situations and scenarios and plots and all the rest of things. So yeah, very, very interesting. So tell me then, what did you if you could summarize, I'm going to ask you two questions. what is your favourite moment out of Fleabag? Any of the Fleabags? The script, the TV series, the movie that you now know
Yeah.
you've watched of the stage play?
Well, I think in terms of TV series, it has to be the speech that the sexy priest does, isn't it? And when he's talking about love, and then poor Fleabag is sat there
Oh,
listening to
yeah.
him about how horrible love is.
Yeah.
She knows it's about her.
Yeah. It's so their dynamic is so good, isn't it? As
It
a
really is.
duo, it's such a
Yeah,
brilliantly. We were just hanging on every second of that relationship, weren't we?
yeah,
You know, for all its
yeah,
good and bad, it was absolutely
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah.
It's yeah, it's a funny one. I liked the moment where she was where Fleabag was in the church talking to the priest, and she says, "Oh yeah, I don't believe in God," and then the picture falls behind her.
Oh,
Remember that
yeah,
falls to the ground, and he's like,
yeah.
and the priest goes, "I love it when he does that." It's brilliant. Such a great
Yeah,
moment. I mean, there were so many great moments
yeah,
throughout the
yeah,
series, but
yeah.
you know those
The
sorts of ones.
confession
But
scene.
again, yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's down. It goes back to the timing, doesn't it? I mean, in that
Yeah,
particular moment, the
yeah,
timing of that was everything, and
yeah.
yeah, which is brilliant. So then, tell me if you could also summarize for me, Lorna. What if
Mm,
you were? We're not in the business of recommending books per se, but if
mhm.
you was to say to someone that this is worth reading, what would you say is the best thing or the most important thing you got out of reading this particular book?
My favorite bit. Well, it's the joy of storytelling that really comes across. And through the relationships that she's got, particularly with Vicky, it's you just and you because like she said that she'd lost the joy and the playfulness of storytelling, but she really you've it jumps off the page, the playfulness and the connection that she generates. And for me, that's what storytelling is about: is connecting with people. And it's about hope. And for me, I really what I want to get across in storytelling is hope and joy, and because I think those things make us better people. That if we can, because Fleabag just has so many fears in there, so many day-to-day fears, and that Fleabag has to contend with, and she's struggling with loss and these kind of things. And though by presenting those fears, we can then and experiencing and watching those her go through that, we can then acknowledge our own fears and face our own fears. Because if we don't know that our fears are there, then we can't face them. And then that kind of that's the thing that I love about story is that it then
Mm.
gives us that incentive, that hope, that joy that can help us to navigate our own lives and our own conflicts and situations and feel less alone in all of that.
Definitely. And I think that's really key, isn't it? Feeling less alone, because
Mm.
seeing characters like Fleabag, where you go, oh gosh, actually, I don't feel so bad about myself now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Or
they're
whatever
a
it
hot
might
mess,
be.
and I love them. That when you see a character as a complete hot mess, and you love them anyway, and you're like, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not so bad after all.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's not just me that thinks like that or whatever it
Yeah,
is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is. And that's why we do it, isn't it? It's the joy of
yeah,
storytelling and all the great things it does about making us better people and creating
mm,
worlds that we can escape to and all those wonderful
mm,
things, and making us realize that we're not as bad as we might think, or we're all human, and
mm,
humanity is
yeah,
a,
yeah,
there's a nice
yeah,
universalness to that or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, we're getting very philosophical.
Yes, indeed.
So thank you so much, Lorna, for joining me
Thank you
in
for
this
having me.
chat about this fantastic book. It's been lovely to chat with you.
Yeah.
And thanks everybody else for joining us. And we hope to see you again. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye.